Bonjour. C'est toujours un plaisir pour moi de revenir dans ce coin de Gatineau, un coin de verdure à quelques minutes du centre-ville d'Ottawa. Gatineau, qui est d'ailleurs une des villes les plus vertes au Québec. Thank you, Ed and Joel, for that introduction. And thank you all for joining us here today for what is the most highly anticipated policy announcement from an opposition party in Canadian history. There's a reason why that's the case. Why so many Canadians are looking to conservatives for new ideas and leadership on this critically important issue. Why our friends in the media have speculated for months on end as to when we would release this policy. And why the Liberals have obsessed over it, literally counting the days until the Conservative plan is released, and attacking it even before it's been made public. It's because the Liberals have failed. If Trudeau's approach was working, if Canada's environment and its performance was actually improving, nobody would care what Conservatives had to say about it. But the Liberal approach is not working, and Canadians need an alternative. Canadians trusted Justin Trudeau when he said he would protect the environment and lower Canada's emissions. Instead, all he got was a carbon tax. The carbon tax isn't simply another Liberal tax grab. It is so much more than that. It represents a betrayal of trust. A classic Liberal bait and switch, promising Canadians a plan to lower emissions and protect the environment, and instead delivering nothing but a tax to punish taxpayers and pad government revenues. Les Canadiens se souviennent de l'accord de Kyoto. Malgré des gouvernements majoritaires successifs et plusieurs années de voeux pieux sur ces objectifs, les libéraux n'ont jamais fait de progrès pour réaliser les cibles d'émissions de Kyoto. Au moment où notre gouvernement conservateur précédent est arrivé au pouvoir en 2006, Kyoto était hors de portée. L'inaction des libéraux l'avait rendu impossible à entendre. 13 ans plus tard, et nous revoilà dans la même situation. Cette fois, c'est l'accord de Paris. Un autre effort international qui vise à lutter contre les changements climatiques, une autre promesse grandiose d'un gouvernement libéral qui demandait au Canada de faire sa part. Et encore un autre échec. Just after being elected, Justin Trudeau committed Canada to the Paris Agreement and promised Canadians he would reach its targets, which also happened to be the same targets set by the previous Conservative government. A 30% reduction of 2005 greenhouse gas emissions levels by 2030. That promise, like so many others from this government, has been broken. Not only is Canada failing to hit our targets, we are getting further and further away. In 2016, we were 44 megatons over target. In 2017, that number rose to 66 megatons. And last year, we were 103 megatons over. Trudeau's solution? A carbon tax. A carbon tax that will hit hardworking families the hardest, with higher costs for gasoline, groceries, and home heating. A carbon tax that won't apply at all to some of Canada's biggest emitters, thanks to a sweetheart exemption deal from Justin Trudeau that will allow them to pay no tax on up to 90% of their emissions. And a carbon tax that will go higher if he's reelected. How high is anybody's guess? They won't answer questions when they are put to them. And just last week, the Parliamentary Budget Officer said that in order to reach Paris, the Liberal carbon tax would have to be over $100 per ton in all 10 provinces, not just those Trudeau has forced his tax on. With sales taxes, this would add 23 cents a litre to the price of gas and cost an average Ontario family of four about $1,000 more per year. And that's only the beginning. Trudeau's own Environment Department is already planning for a $300 a ton carbon tax. As an environmental policy, the carbon tax is, by every possible measure and projection, a failure of epic proportions. It makes virtually no contribution to the global fight against climate change, and it only makes life more expensive for Canadian families and small businesses. It is simply not as advertised. Nous devons adopter une nouvelle approche, et les conservateurs sont prêts à le faire. Nous devrions tous être inquiets des changements climatiques, du gendre du planète que nous allons laisser aux générations futures. Mais la question n'est pas de savoir si nous sommes préoccupés ou si nous devrions être inquiets. Bien sûr que nous devons l'être. La vraie question est, qu'est-ce que le Canada devrait faire? Les paroles creuses et les gestes symboliques qui sont la marque de commerce de la politique environnementale libérale ne vont pas améliorer les choses. Canadians expect results, and conservatives know that liberals are great at making promises, but conservatives are great at delivering. Because protecting the environment is a core conservative principle. Whatever we inherit from those who came before us, we must leave in better shape for those who come after us. And conservatives have a proud legacy when it comes to managing Canada's natural environment and improving Canada's environmental performance. This legacy spans the full history of our country. The founder of our party and Canada's first Prime Minister, Sir John A. Macdonald, laid the groundwork for the national parks system and created the first three, Banff, Yoho, and Glacier. Years later, Prime Minister Robert Borden championed Arctic exploration to establish a scientific understanding of our northern frontier. Prime Minister John Diefenbaker further entrenched Canada's Arctic sovereignty with his roads to resources policy, while also enshrining in legislation Canadian Environment Week, an annual tradition encouraging environmental action that continues to this day. Brian Mulroney, nommé le premier ministre canadien le plus vert en 2006, a négocié l'accord Canada-États-Unis sur les pluies acides, créé 8 nouveaux parcs nationaux et appliqué la loi canadienne sur la protection de l'environnement, la première loi anti-pollution générale de l'histoire de notre pays. Le précédent gouvernement conservateur a réussi à réduire les émissions de gaz à effet de serre entre 2007 et 2015 grâce à des programmes ciblés dans les secteurs d'agriculture, des transports et de l'énergie. Le plan que j'annonce aujourd'hui, un vrai plan pour protéger notre environnement, est basé sur ce précieux héritage conservateur. Notre plan équilibre la nécessité pour le Canada de combattre les changements climatiques en réduisant les émissions globales et notre engagement fondamental de laisser plus d'argent dans les poches des Canadiens et Canadiennes et de leur permettre d'améliorer leur quotidien. A real plan to protect our environment is built on 3 guiding principles. Number 1, green technology, not taxes. Number 2, a cleaner and greener natural environment. And number 3, taking the climate change fight global. This plan is the most comprehensive environmental platform ever put forward by a political party in Canada, in far surpassing anything Justin Trudeau put out before the 2015 election. 60 pages, 11,000 words, and 55 specific, realistic, and achievable policy commitments. Ce plan est la plateforme environnementale la plus compréhensive jamais présentée par un parti politique au Canada, qui est de beaucoup supérieur à ce que Justin Trudeau a présenté avant l'élection de 2015. 60 pages, 11 000 mots et 55 politiques spécifiques, réalistes et réalisables. Now, if I were to stand here today and walk you through all of them, we'd be here all night. So instead, I'll deal with the highlights. First, Conservatives fundamentally believe that you cannot tax your way to a cleaner environment. Instead, the answer lies in technology. And a real plan to protect our environment recognizes this. First, we will implement green investment standards that require polluters whose emissions exceed strict limits to invest in emissions reduction technology specific to their industry. We will set this limit at 40 kilotons per year. That's 10 kilotons stricter than the Liberals' output-based system. Under the Conservative plan, it will not be free to pollute. And unlike the Liberal scheme, there will be no sweetheart deals for anybody. However, rather than simply funneling money to the government, as the Liberal plan dictates, emitters who exceed our limits will be required to invest in technology that will lower emissions to fight climate change. Technology, not taxes. The fact is, we can actually create more jobs in Canada through technological growth, while at the same time lowering global emissions. This is perhaps the single greatest difference between the Liberal scheme and the Conservative plan. We will introduce the Green Home Tax Credit, a 2-year plan that will encourage Canadians to improve their homes with emissions-reducing technologies. In 2017, emissions from buildings accounted for 12% of Canada's total greenhouse gas emissions. We cannot tackle climate change without making our buildings greener. Les Canadiens vont pouvoir réclamer un crédit remboursable de 20% de leur impôt sur le revenu pour des améliorations vertes à leur domicile de plus de $1,000 et jusqu'à $20,000. This will allow Canadians to save up to $3,800 on their green renovations in each year. And we will introduce the Green Patent Credit for green innovators and entrepreneurs who create new emissions-reducing technologies. This will lower the tax rate from 15% to 5% on income earned from the patent of a new green technology. Now, these are only 3 of several new policy proposals in our Green Technology, Not Taxes plan. Our second policy principle, a cleaner and greener natural environment, focuses squarely on protecting our air, land, water, and wildlife. Canada is home to some of the most beautiful places on the planet. From Stanley Park and Banff National Park in the west, aux Rochers Percés en Gaspésie, to Gros Morne and the Cape Breton Highlands in the east, to Lancaster Sound and Nahanni in the north. Just last week, I took my family fishing at Rideau Lake, and I watched as my children experienced the beauty and wonder it has to offer. Ces zones et bien d'autres encore méritent notre admiration et notre protection. À cette fin, nous allons renforcer la protection contre les parasites et les espèces envahissantes qui menacent nos habitants. Nous allons rétablir des consultations constructives avec les intervenants et les groupes autochtones sur les aires protégées que les libéraux Trudeau ont annulées. We will reinstate funding for wetland, watershed, and fisheries conservations, also revoked by the Liberals. We will reconvene the hunting and angling advisory panel the Liberals disbanded, so those with the greatest interest in protecting species and habitat can share their expertise in how it will be done. We will take real action on reducing plastic waste by harmonizing recycling standards across provinces and working with industry to cut down on excessive packaging. Et nous allons protéger nos cours d'eau des déversements d'eau usée. Un des premiers gestes de Catherine McKenna comme ministre de l'Environnement a été de permettre à la ville de Montréal de déverser 8 milliards de litres d'eau usée dans le fleuve Saint-Laurent. Non seulement ceci est-il absolument répugnant, mais cela envoie le message que nos cours d'eau ne comptent pas et peuvent être pollués. Comme Premier ministre, je vais travailler de concert avec les municipalités pour mettre fin à cette pratique. Finally, our third policy principle, taking the climate change fight global. Greenhouse gas emissions do not recognize borders, nor are the impacts of climate change proportional to any one country's emissions. Whether emissions are reduced in Canada or in China, the scientific impact on global climate change is the exact same. we don't do the world any favors by driving investment and jobs away from Canada, where energy is cleaner and environmental standards are higher, and into the welcoming arms of countries with dirtier sources of energy and lower environmental standards. Under that scenario, the Liberal scenario, everybody loses. Canada loses jobs and global emissions go up. Canada could stop everything tomorrow. Natural resource development, mining, manufacturing, agriculture, everything. And it would mean almost nothing. Justin Trudeau said so himself. He said, quote, even if Canada stopped everything tomorrow and the other countries didn't have any solutions, it wouldn't make a big difference. If you shut down Canada's entire economy for a year, China would replace all our emissions within 3 weeks. The fact is, Canada will not make a meaningful contribution to fighting climate change by focusing only on our own emissions. We must look beyond our borders. This is the fresh new perspective Canada needs, and as Prime Minister, it will be mine. It starts with exporting our environmental excellence. J'ai énormément confiance en l'innovation et l'ingéniosité des Canadiens, et je suis fier de ce que nous avons accompli. Nos meilleurs et les plus brillants sont prêts à faire leur marque sur la scène mondiale en réduisant les émissions dans les pays les plus émetteurs du monde. Take liquefied natural gas, or LNG, as an example. LNG has tremendous potential to lower global emissions while also growing the Canadian economy. By expanding our LNG capacity, we can help countries like China transition away from coal and dramatically lower global emissions. Or take carbon capture and storage. If China outfitted only 100 of its 3,000 coal plants with Canadian carbon capture and storage technology, they could eliminate more than 300 megatons of greenhouse gas emissions every year, nearly half of what Canada's entire economy produces. Our real plan to protect our environment not only acknowledges these scientific realities, it lays out specific ways to get results that will bring us closer to our emissions reductions targets. First, we will bring in a green expansion accelerator that will provide targeted capital cost allowances to industries like LNG that can be shown to reduce emissions in other countries. And we will create the new Canadian Clean brand, a product designation that will communicate to the world which technologies can lower emissions around the world. En terminant, j'aimerais dire quelques mots sur l'accord de Paris. Les cibles du Canada mentionnées dans cet accord sont des cibles conservatrices. Les libéraux les réclament comme les leurs, mais ils ont orienté le Canada dans la mauvaise direction. Nous croyons que notre plan donne au Canada la meilleure possibilité et la plus réaliste d'atteindre les cibles de Paris. In fact, the Parliamentary Budget Officer, in his report last week, made a point of saying that technological advancement and adoption alone could lower our baseline emissions by 101 megatons by 2030. If that is true for Canada, imagine what Canadian technology can do for the world. Now, in closing, I want to say a few words about how we got here. More and more Canadians are realizing that paying a tax isn't going to help the environment, that a carbon tax is not an environmental plan. They are looking for a real plan, a plan that is realistic and achievable, a plan that doesn't punish them for living their lives while acknowledging the truly global nature of the climate change problem. That is our plan, the Conservative plan. Comme notre histoire la démontre, ce sont les conservateurs qui nous ont fait avancer vers une protection environnementale réelle et significative. Nous l'avons déjà fait et nous allons le faire encore. Climate change is real, and it represents a serious threat not only to Canada, but to our entire planet. So we owe it to our children, who will inherit from us this great and beautiful country, to preserve the environment they will be entrusted to protect. I'm a father of 5, and they mean absolutely everything to me. Everything I do in this job, I do for them. Je suis père de 5 enfants, Il signifie absolument tout pour moi. Tout ce que je fais dans ce métier, je le fais pour eux. And just as conservatives will not leave our children a fiscal deficit, we will also not leave them an environmental deficit. That is my vision for Canada. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Merci. Alors maintenant, je suis content de prendre vos questions. Right now, I'm ready for your questions.
Bonjour, Marc Godbout, Radio-Canada. Monsieur Scheer, vous promettez dans votre plan d'atteindre les cibles de Paris. Par contre, quand on regarde bien le plan, il n'y a pas de mesures qui chiffrent les réductions des gaz à effet de serre. Je me permets de vous poser cette question-là. Comment les Canadiens, à partir de maintenant, peuvent vous croire s'il n'y a pas de cible, s'il n'y a pas de mesures chiffrées?
Alors, on doit avoir cette discussion en réalisation que le plan libéral est incapable d'atteindre les cibles de Paris. Ça, c'est pas mon opinion, ça, c'est le fait. Et il y a un modèle basé sur le rapport de le PBO qui disent que cette approche, les investissements dans la technologie rapide, dans une manière très vite, peut réduire les émissions dans une manière bien plus vite, dans une manière bien plus réalistique qu'une taxe sur le carbone. Alors, c'est clair que ces mesures, les chiffres sont là. Si la Chine a implémenté notre technologie, quand on parle de la production d'électricité, on peut réduire les émissions globales par un niveau de 300 mégatonnes minimum. Alors, nous sommes très confiants que ce modèle est basé sur les vrais chiffres et qui donne le Canada la meilleure opportunité pour atteindre les cibles de Paris.
Vous avez beaucoup d'intentions dans votre plan. Vous avez dit vous-même qu'il y a 11 000 mots, si j'ai bien compris. Mais en lisant ces 11 000 mots, il y a peut-être plusieurs gens qui, demain, en lisant votre plan, vont en arriver à la conclusion ou vont être tentés de dire qu'il n'y a pas beaucoup de concret là-dedans. Alors, est-ce que vous avez l'intention d'apporter des précisions ou d'être plus précis dans les prochaines semaines, d'une part, et est-ce que vous avez l'intention d'annoncer des mesures contraignantes? Je dis bien des mesures contraignantes ici.
Alors, c'est clair que ces 11 000 mots ont beaucoup de choses concrètes. Le crédit d'impôt pour les rénovations domiciles, ça c'est quelque chose de concret. Le régie pour les grands émetteurs, ça c'est quelque chose de concret. Et c'est basé sur les chiffres concrets de le PBO qui disent, qui montrent aux Canadiens qu'une approche d'investissement en technologie fonctionne mieux qu'une taxe sur le carbone. Et ça, c'est le choix pour les Canadiens. C'est un modèle qui ne fonctionne pas, qui n'a aucune possibilité d'atteindre les cibles de Paris, ou l'autre choix, c'est notre plan. Notre plan qui va éliminer la taxe sur le carbone, mais qui va donner les incitatifs aux les compagnies, au secteur privé, mais aussi aux les individuels et les familles pour réduire leur consommation d'énergie et de réduire leurs émissions. Et je dois dire, il n'y a aucun modèle, aucun chiffre concret dans le plan de Justin Trudeau en 2015. Dans son 2 pages, une page dans la campagne, la plateforme, il n'y a aucune régie de modèle. Il n'y a aucun modèle dans le plan d'NPD ou le Parti vert. Ce plan était basé sur un modèle concret qui était souligné par le PBO il y a quelques jours.
Hi, Mr. Scheer, Molly Thomas from CTV National News. We're not here to talk about the concrete plan of Trudeau. I'm here to talk about your plan. So what are the tangible numbers for reducing greenhouse gas emissions with what you put forward today?
Mm-hmm. So the tangible numbers are throughout this very comprehensive policy document. And as I said before, this is the most comprehensive policy ever produced by an opposition party in Canadian history. And I'm so proud of this plan. I'm proud of all the hard work of my colleagues who have gone into this. We consulted across the country with many different stakeholder groups and experts. The concrete numbers that are in this plan include a green home tax credit that will save Canadians up to $3,800 a year to invest in things like high efficiency furnaces, in insulation, in double paned windows so that they can reduce their energy costs. That will make life more affordable for them and lower greenhouse gas emissions. The Parliamentary Budget Officer himself indicated that this kind of approach would reduce Canada's greenhouse gas emissions by the tune of about 100 megatons. So those are concrete numbers, and those are concrete proposals that have been based on models that people around the world are recognizing. And this is in contrast to a failed approach where the Liberals have gone down the route of a carbon tax that is being shown not to work. It is not my opinion. It's not a political position to say that the carbon tax is not working. It is not working. It has been proven to not work. So my question is, why would the Liberals keep going down a path that has been shown to fail? They should get on board with this type of approach, which will produce real results for Canadians.
So Canada has a target of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 30% by 2030. Are you still committed to that, and can this plan actually do that?
This plan gives Canada the best possible chance of achieving those targets. We know that the Liberal approach will not. It will not. Independent expert analysis have said that the Trudeau carbon tax will not get us to those targets. This plan, by investing in technology, not taxes, gives Canada the best chance of hitting those targets.
Brian Mullen, Global News. Do you plan to release an itemized list of for each of the measures that you've announced today, how much greenhouse gas emissions you will reduce for each of those measures?
Well, as I said, there are a lot of concrete numbers that this is based on. The modeling that has been done and has been highlighted by the Parliamentary Budget Officer indicates that this type of rapid investment in technological advancement gives countries a better chance of reducing those emissions on a much more accelerated scale. He's evaluated that as at around 100 megatons. So we're very encouraged by that. We know that buildings account for about 12% of greenhouse gas emissions, and our policy to incentivize Canadians to make investments in making their homes more energy efficient will help reduce those emissions as well. Of course, as a conservative government, upon taking office and upon implementing these types of things, would be able to go into greater detail on some of the measures, but we are very confident on things like conservation efforts, investing in conservation. That not only plays a role in reducing greenhouse gas emissions by sequestering that carbon, it also adds to the ability for Canada to protect our biodiversity. It helps with flood control. It helps with cleaning our water systems. So these are things that are not my opinion. These are proven scientific facts that we have based this plan on.
And you plan to force industries to make investments they are not already making. What proof do you have that those businesses won't pass on those costs?
So could you speak up a little bit louder?
Your plan will force industries to make investments they are not already making. What proof do you have that they won't pass those costs on to consumers?
Well, right now we know that those companies will pass on the cost of the Liberal carbon tax to consumers, primarily because those fees go right into government coffers. The advantage of this plan is that it gives flexibility to the private sector to make those investments in making their own operations more efficient. So when a company invests in using less energy or finding efficiencies in transportations, that will reduce costs for consumers because they'll be able to produce products and provide services at a more efficient rate. So this is actually a win-win for both taxpayers and consumers.
Okay, sort of to follow that, Christina Lopez, CBC News. How would you make big polluters, oil and gas companies, invest in clean technology incentives for them to reduce emissions when they could, in theory, invest in their own company's green technology development if they've been certified? Doesn't that defeat the purpose?
Well, the purpose is reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So if they invest in new technology or in creating industry alliances with other companies in the same sector to develop new tools or new methods, if that leads to lower greenhouse gas emissions, then that is the point of this whole exercise. The advantage to this approach is that it does not provide a new revenue stream for government that this government has shown that it uses to pick winners and losers and give $12 million to Loblaws and other multi-billion-dollar private companies. It allows those emitters to rapidly develop technology to reduce their global to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. So we believe that this approach strikes that perfect balance of a regime that will be enforced, it will be audited, it will be based on standards. They will have to show that there are actually investments being made that lead to greenhouse gas reductions, but it allows them to some flexibility to find a variety of ways to do that so that they don't just leave Canada, set up shop in another country with lower environmental standards and without access to clean technology, only to see emissions go up.
Okay, and speaking of other countries, can you specify how you would convince global companies to buy cleaner Canadian aluminum over Chinese aluminum?
Well, part of the whole Canadian Clean brand and part about recognizing the technological advances that we've come up with here in Canada is to promote that around the world. And when a company can take advantage of something like a green accelerator to move production here to Canada by taking advantage of a more favorable tax system here in Canada to expand production, that will of course lead to a competitive edge for Canadian companies or companies around the world that choose to do that in Canada. This policy will act like a magnet for companies who have developed new technology or who have found a way to reduce their emissions to take credit for that here in Canada so that it can displace output from countries that have a much higher intensity of greenhouse gas emissions. So we believe that this will create a market-based mechanism to do exactly that, to encourage companies to produce at a lower rate of emissions here in Canada.
Bonjour, Marie Vastel, Le Devoir. Je veux reposer une question que mes collègues vous ont posée parce que vous n'avez pas vraiment répondu à la question pourquoi ne pas avoir chiffré vos cibles de réduction de gaz à effet de serre. Vous dites notre plan est meilleur, il va mieux y arriver que le plan libéral, mais il me semble qu'un plan chiffré, c'est un peu la base. Pourquoi est-ce que vous n'avez pas inclus ces cibles chiffrées-là dans votre plan? Pour quelle raison?
Ah ben, il y a beaucoup de chiffres dans ce plan, basés sur l'analyse des experts comme le PBO. Il montre qu'on peut obtenir une réduction de plus de 100 mégatonnes de CO2. Ça, c'est un vrai chiffre. Et le contraste aujourd'hui, c'est le contraste entre le plan environnemental de Justin Trudeau en 2015, qui n'a aucun modèle, aucun chiffre, une demi-page dans une plateforme. Le plan d'NPD de cette semaine avec aucun chiffre ou modèle et le plan vert. Je suis très, très, très fier de le travail dans cette plan et je suis très confiant dans les chiffres et dans les cibles.
Sur le programme pour les grands émetteurs, pour leur faire réduire leurs émissions aussi, vous avez beaucoup critiqué le plan libéral en dénonçant le fait qu'il y a seulement au-dessus d'un certain seuil sur lesquels ils sont punis là, pour leurs émissions, mais vous avez essentiellement le même modèle en disant qu'au-delà de 40 kilotonnes, ils vont devoir réinvestir un certain montant. Donc, comment est-ce que vous expliquez que vous avez essentiellement le même système que celui que vous critiquez?
Mais c'est tellement différent. Il y a quelque chose qui crée les différences. La différence principale, nous allons éliminer la taxe sur le carbone pour les individuels et pour les familles. Nos critiques de le gouvernement, c'est qu'il a imposé une nouvelle taxe sur les individuels au Canada, mais donne un accord spécial, une exemption pour les grands pollueurs. Ça, c'est pas juste. Alors, on va éliminer la taxe sur le carbone et on va imposer une régie plus stricte que les libéraux. On va mettre nos niveaux à 40, alors leur est 50. Alors, notre régie, c'est bien plus efficace. Et l'autre différence, c'est le régie pour les grands émetteurs, pour les libéraux, c'est une nouvelle source de revenus pour le gouvernement. Notre plan va laisser cet argent dans le secteur privé pour assurer que la croissance économique peut continuer, pas la croissance de le gouvernement.
Two quick questions. Bonjour, M. Scheer, Mélanie Marquis de la presse. Vous avez évoqué l'accord de Kyoto dans votre discours. Or, on sait ce qui est arrivé avec l'accord de Kyoto sous le précédent gouvernement de Stephen Harper, on s'en était retiré. Je voudrais savoir si vous comptez rester dans l'accord de Paris.
J'ai souligné l'accord de Kyoto parce que c'est le bilan libéral. C'est dans le pratique normale d'un gouvernement libéral. Il signe les accords sans plan pour réaliser. Et nous avons vu avec l'accord de Kyoto que l'ancien Premier ministre libéral a signé avec beaucoup d'attention, mais aucun plan de réaliser. Et le contraste est ici avec Paris aussi. Comme j'ai dit souvent pendant mes discours et pendant les derniers mois, on va continuer de travailler, d'atteindre les cibles de Paris. Ça, c'est clair.
Mais je voudrais savoir, aujourd'hui, 19 juin, vous déposez votre plan environnemental. Est-ce que vous vous engagez formellement à rester dans l'accord de Paris?
Oui, absolument.
Hello, Teresa Wright from the Canadian Press. Are you planning to meet Canada's targets by cutting emissions elsewhere or taking credit for helping other jurisdictions to cut their emissions?
So as I've said today, what's important is that we don't just stay focused on what we can do here at home. It's important. It's very, very important that Canada shows the world and takes responsibility for our emissions. This plan does just that. It has a comprehensive approach to lower domestic greenhouse gas emissions through a variety of ways. But we also must realize that if we stop there, we don't do the world any favors, that we have a role to play. We can punch above our weight. We can leverage the technology and the advancements that we've already accomplished here in this country by accelerating even more of it and sharing it around the world that are knocking at our door to be able to take advantage of things like Canadian carbon capture and sequestration, like LNG. And if we had a government that was proud of that and included that in the mix, we could do much more to fight global emissions. So whether or not we get credit for it is less important than if we get those real results and actually lower those emissions.
So is that a yes, that it's part of lowering Canada's emissions, that taking
As I said,
credit for that?
I believe it's incredibly important that we do both, that we have a realistic, achievable plan to lower Canadian emissions here at home, but we must recognize the fact that we could shut everything off in Canada tomorrow, and that would be replaced by global emissions within 3 weeks. So let's do both. Let's help share our technology, our advancements around the world. Let's take advantage of the fact that we can produce things here in Canada much more efficiently with much lower emissions. Aluminum is a great example of that. We can produce aluminum at a fraction of the emissions than a country like China or India or take advantage of that. Let's incentivize expansion of production here to displace production in other jurisdictions that would emit at exponentially higher rates of production. If at the end of the day, the goal is to have less CO2 in our atmosphere, then we must do both. We must work to ensure that there is a global approach to this, because CO2 molecules do not have passports. They do not recognize jurisdictional borders. So it is appropriate, it is the responsible way to have that balanced approach.
Carl Meyer, National Observer. Hi, Mr. Scheer. As my colleagues have pointed out, the plan does not project the amount by which each of your proposed initiatives would lower emissions. So have you done that math? Do you have those numbers internally, yes or no?
So we have done a lot of analysis, and we've consulted with a lot of stakeholders and experts. And we are very confident that this approach will give Canada the best chance of achieving those Paris targets. I point to the Parliamentary Budget Officer report that specifically said, one, carbon tax isn't working. The carbon tax will not get us to those targets. We are having this conversation with the backdrop that Justin Trudeau's approach will fail to meet the Paris targets. That is not my opinion. That is not a political statement. That is a known fact. So this plan, based on the model that the PBO has pointed to, focuses on technology, not taxes. And we are very confident that the development that comes with that will give Canada the best chance of achieving its Paris targets. I point to our energy sector, which without these types of incentives have already reduced the intensity of emissions by 30% in the last decade or so. So imagine what can be accomplished when we have these type of accelerators, these types of incentives.
Thank you. Maura Forrest, National Post. Climate policy analysts, including at the Ecofiscal Commission, say that this idea of taking global emissions reductions, taking credit for those here in Canada, that's unlikely to work with Article 6. Can Canada reach its Paris targets without that, without taking credit for global emissions reductions?
Well, my view on that is that, as I said, I don't believe that Canadians want to see emissions go up in other countries at the expense of jobs and investment here. And how that is kept score, we will leave to others to determine. What this approach does is allow Canada to make significant reductions here at home, while recognizing that we should be doing this anyway. We should be sharing our technology, accelerating the development of it and the implementation of it around the world. So I believe that this plan, as it is written, will give Canada the best chance of reaching our Paris targets.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Merci tout le monde.